Tonight, as you settle back and let your shoulders soften, imagine the lights in your room dimming to a gentle glow. Outside, the day is finally loosening its grip. Emails, headlines, unfinished lists drift a little farther away with each slow breath. Somewhere beyond your window, traffic hums and then fades like a tide drawing back from the shore of your thoughts. Now in your mind, let the walls of your room dissolve into warm darkness. Ahead of you, a different night unfolds. You find yourself standing beneath a wide Mesopotamian sky, somewhere in the deep south of Iraq, where the desert stretches out in quiet waves. The air is warm but not harsh, carrying just a whisper of wind. Out here, the silence feels almost physical, heavier than the sand under your feet, as if the ruins all around are holding their breath. Broken bricks rise from the earth like the remnants of long-forgotten cities. Low mounds of mud brick glimmer under the stars, their edges softened by thousands of years of wind. Nothing moves, no crowds, no traffic, no notifications. Only you, the night, and the quiet outline of a world that ended a very long time ago. As you stand there, listening to this gentle emptiness, a question arrives, not in a loud voice, but like someone thinking out loud beside you. What if the very first words humanity ever pressed into clay were not meant to begin a story, but to keep the last whisper of an old world from disappearing? Not a theory to be argued or disproved, just a soft possibility to hold for a while, the way you might cradle a small, fragile object in your hands. Tonight, we are not here to solve anything. We are here to drift with that possibility, to walk slowly through clay tablets, museum halls, quiet myths, and old questions, and to see if, somewhere along the way, your own thoughts can put down their heavy bags and rest. Before we drift deeper into tonight's gentle journey, remember to subscribe to Ancient Sleep Story. Here, you'll always find peaceful stories that soothe the heart and quiet the mind. Where are you listening from tonight? Leave a comment. Your presence adds warmth to this quiet corner of the night. Now let the desert fade just a little as another place comes into focus. Imagine a museum archive long after closing time. The public lights are off. Only a few soft lamps remain, pooling golden light in quiet corners. The air is cool here, faintly scented with paper, dust, and something like old stone after rain. You walk slowly down a narrow corridor lined with shelves and padded trays. Your footsteps are soft, almost swallowed by the carpet. On either side of you, in shallow boxes, rest thousands of small clay tablets, no larger than the palm of your hand. Under the gentle light, the writing on them looks like tiny bird tracks pressed into mud long ago, each stroke of the stylus frozen in time. Someone offers you a pair of cotton gloves and you slip them on. The fabric hugs your fingers, and when you lift one tablet from its tray, the clay feels cool and faintly rough beneath the thin layer of cloth. You tilt it carefully and watch the shadows slide through the wedge-shaped marks. Each mark is a decision someone made 5,000 years ago about where to press, how hard, how deep. If you look closely in your mind's eye, you can almost see them. A faint thumbprint along the edge, a ridge of skin accidentally pressed into wet clay in a moment of concentration. A small human mistake that no one bothered to erase because the writer could not imagine that one day someone like you would be here in a quiet digital age listening to their work while trying to fall asleep. Did you ever walk through an old street or building and feel that someone, long ago, once stood exactly where you are now? Maybe it happened in a quiet hallway, or in a stairwell that smelled of wood and rain, or in a small bookstore. That soft, inexplicable feeling that you are sharing space with people you cannot see. This archive is like that feeling turned into objects. Every tablet is a small square of cooled earth, holding the memory of hands, of thoughts, of daily worries and quiet hopes, tax records, star charts, temple songs, lists of who brought barley and who received oil. Nothing dramatic on the surface, yet together they form a low, steady murmur of a civilization that once moved through its days, the way you move through yours. Tonight, you do not need to remember the dates, the names, or the technical terms. You do not need to keep track of who ruled where or how the scholars pieced the evidence together. All of that can flow around you like warm water. The only thing you are invited to keep is the feeling that under all our noise there has always been this quiet urge to remember, to leave something behind for whoever comes next. In Sumerian temples and palaces, there was a phrase they loved to carve into stone and clay. It can be translated very simply as the restoration of what was before. Not invention, not starting from nothing, restoration. Imagine that idea as a small lantern in your hands as you stand in this silent archive. Somewhere between the desert outside and this cool, sleeping museum, a story is waiting to unfold about a people who believed they were repairing a broken thread in time. For now, let the lantern glow softly. Let your breath slow a little more. In the next part of our journey, we'll follow that glow back through the desert night to the first cities that rose along the rivers and to the hands that decided some memories deserved to last as long as clay itself for you. In the hush of the archive, with that cool clay tablet resting gently in your gloved hands, you notice something simple and strangely comforting. It is just earth, baked mud, nothing more. The same kind of earth that might be under the pavement outside your window or hidden beneath a layer of grass somewhere near your home. Somehow, knowing that, the distance between your world and theirs feels smaller, like two quiet rooms connected by a dim, peaceful hallway. As you breathe in and out, slow and easy, imagine that hallway stretching back through time. With each exhale, you drift one soft step farther, not with a jolt or flash, but like the slow glide of a camera in a nighttime film. Shelves and boxes fade into darkness. The cool smell of the archive melts into something older. Damp river air, a hint of wood smoke, the faint sweetness of grain stored after harvest. When the picture comes into focus again, you are no longer in a modern building. You're standing on the bank of a wide, gentle river beneath a sky crowded with unfamiliar stars. This is the land between the Tigris and Euphrates, though no one here calls it that yet. The water moves like a strip of black glass reflecting pinpoints of light. Along the shore, clusters of low mud brick houses lean together, their flat roofs outlined by the warm glow of oil lamps. It is not yet civilization in a textbook. It is simply evening in one of the first cities humans ever built. The heat of the day has softened into a quiet, lingering warmth. Somewhere nearby, a dog barks once and then settles. A baby fusses and is quickly soothed. From behind a wall, you hear the slow, steady rhythm of hands grinding grain on stone, a sound that has existed for so long it almost feels like part of the earth's heartbeat. In a small courtyard, someone rinses a bowl, water splashes, runs down a clay drain, disappears into darkness. You begin to walk along a narrow street of packed earth. The walls on either side rise high and close, built of sun-baked brick, their surfaces smooth in some places, crumbling in others. The passage is shadowed, but above you the sky is wide open, a soft river of starlight flowing overhead. Now and then a doorway spills out a rectangle of lamplight, painting your path gold for a moment before you step past and slip back into cool shadow. At the end of one lane, the street opens into a small square. A handful of people linger there before sleep. Two men talk in low voices beside a stack of reed baskets. A girl sits on the ground drawing idle shapes in the dust with a stick, erasing them with her foot. An older woman rests on a low stool with her hands folded in her lap, eyes half closed, as if she is listening to a story that no one is actually telling out loud. Beyond the square rises a darker shape, a temple or administrative house, its outline heavy and still against the night sky. Torches burn on either side of the doorway, their flames swaying gently in the breeze, sending up tiny showers of sparks that disappear into the dark. From within, there's a faint, clean smell of damp clay, freshly cut from the riverbank and carried in by tired arms. If you step inside with your imagination, you find a long, simple room. A low table stands near the center, and on it lie rows of flat, moist clay tablets waiting to be touched by a stylus. A lamp burns close by, its light soft and steady, turning the wet clay surfaces into small, glowing lakes. Beyond that circle of light, the room recedes into a comfortable dimness. A young scribe sits at the table, his back slightly hunched, his stylus held in practiced fingers. His face is calm but focused, shadows resting under his eyes. He is not writing poetry tonight or grand myths about gods and heroes. He is counting jars of barley, recording how much came into the temple storehouse and who will be given what in the days ahead. He presses the stylus into the clay, one wedge at a time, each mark a small, deliberate decision. This many jars from this person on this day. His teacher watches from a short distance, arms folded, saying very little. They both know the pattern well. By dawn, the clay will be dry enough to move. By next week, the tablet will be one more brick in the quiet wall of the city's memory. It will help decide who is paid, who is fed, who still owes a little more. Nothing dramatic. Just the fragile arrangements that let a community breathe. From the doorway, you can see how ordinary it all is, and yet in that ordinariness, something quietly miraculous is happening. This city is learning to build a memory outside the human body, to give shape to agreements, worries, and plans in something more durable than a spoken promise. Clay becomes a second mind for the community, a place where time can be slowed down and looked at. If you've ever written a note to yourself and felt a tiny bit lighter afterward, you already understand it. The relief of not having to hold everything in your head at once, of knowing that your thoughts are safe somewhere outside you, that feeling is here in this lamplit room by the river. The Sumerians are practicing it night after night, tablet after tablet, not knowing that distant centuries later, someone half asleep in another world will be listening in. Outside, the city continues its gentle rituals. The river slides past unhurried. Down along the bank, a fisherman checks his nets by touch alone, moving slowly through the dark because he knows this stretch of water the way you know the route from your bed to the kitchen light. In another courtyard, a family has finished its evening meal. Bowls are stacked, embers are nudged into a softer glow. A parent urges a child to sleep. The child protests for a moment, then curls up anyway. Overhead, the stars keep their patient rhythm. Someone in the city is already noticing their patterns. Which star rises when the river is highest? Which bright wanderer appears just before dawn? One day, those observations will become careful marks on clay, numbers, signs, and calm little notes about what the sky does and when. For tonight, though, the stars simply shine, steady, distant, familiar. If you let your shoulders soften a little more, you might feel it. For all its strangeness, this place is not truly far from you. You know what it is to tidy a table at the end of a long day, to listen to a house growing quiet, to feel the relief of letting the world slow down. You know how a small routine, a washed cup, a folded blanket, a light turned low, can tuck the edges of your mind in like a blanket. The people of this city, standing under their own night sky, were not trying to impress history. They were simply trying to live, to keep track of what mattered: fields, harvests, debts, gifts, births, deaths, storms that ruin crops, floods that blessed them. Without meaning to, they left behind a soft, continuous murmur of human thought, pressed into clay and set aside like careful, ancient files. And then gently we return to the archive. The clay in your hands is again a museum object, cool and slightly rough through the thin gloves, but now it feels a little heavier, as if that murmur is still alive somewhere inside it. This small rectangle of earth has traveled millennia to reach this quiet moment, meeting you here as you lie in the dark, letting your own long day come to rest. You don't have to remember any names. You don't have to memorize dates or understand every detail. You are allowed to simply let this story wash past you, like the sound of the river slipping by that sleeping city, like the low hum of voices in another room. With each slow breath, feel the distance between your busy, modern evening and that lamplit riverside grow thinner. You don't have to fix anything or solve any mystery about where knowledge began. For tonight, it is enough to walk those streets in your mind, to share a patch of firelight with people who lived long ago, and to recognize that across thousands of years, our evenings are not so different. In the next part of our journey, we'll follow the people who first dug into these forgotten mounds, brushing sand and soil from buried walls and shattered tablets. We'll see how the earth itself keeps chapters of the past layered within it. How, sometimes, a single cut through the ground can reveal a before and an after, a world that was and a world that came next. For now, stay with the river, the lamplight, and the soft weight of clay in your hands. Let them steady your breathing and slow your thoughts, as the first cities of our species gather quietly around you like a warm, ancient blanket. Back in the cool archive of your imagination, you still hold that small tablet of clay. Its edges are a little chipped, its surface irregular, as if time has gently worn away anything sharp. You turn it slowly, and for just a moment, it feels less like an object and more like a tiny, sleeping landscape. Ridges and valleys of ancient marks, shadows pooling between them like rivers at night. If you listen closely in your mind, beneath the quiet hum of the museum's air, you might hear something else, the softer, rougher sounds of where this tablet once came from. Not the calm, controlled hush of glass cases and labels, but the dry whisper of desert wind, the scrape of metal against soil, the low murmur of voices speaking over sand and stone. Let your attention drift there now. Let the walls of the archive fall away again, and feel the air turn warmer, drier, touched by sunlight, even when the sky begins to darken. In front of you rises not a building, but a mound. From a distance, it looks almost natural. A low, rounded hill of packed earth and broken brick, scattered with shards of pottery and stone. To an untrained eye, it might seem like just another wrinkle on the surface of the desert. But to the archaeologists who first came here in the late 1800s and early 1900s, these mounds were like closed books waiting for someone patient enough to turn the pages. Their camp is simple: canvas tents staked against the wind, crates stacked neatly, lanterns swinging lightly on ropes as dusk arrives, Tools lie in orderly rows, brushes worn soft from use, trowels stained with the color of the soil, notebooks waiting to be filled with small, careful drawings. As the last heat of the day begins to loosen, the team walks slowly back from the mound, dust on their clothes, hair stiff with sand. The work they do is demanding, but it has a kind of quiet rhythm that fits easily into the soft tempo of the night. You follow them in your thoughts as they return the next morning, when the sky is a pale, colorless blue, and the air is still cool enough to breathe deeply without effort. They climb the mound, choose a place to cut down, and begin to scrape away the surface. Inch by inch, thin layers of earth are removed, brushed aside, examined. Every shard of pottery is turned in the hand, every small stone inspected, the way a doctor might listen carefully to a heartbeat. As the trench deepens, the mound begins to speak. At first, it says simple things. Here is a collapsed wall. Here is the corner of a room. Here are traces of a hearth where someone once cooked for a family. But the deeper the archaeologists go, the more the earth reveals its own way of keeping time. Imagine standing at the edge of that excavation pit, looking at the vertical wall of soil they've cut. You see stripes, bands of color and texture, darker earth with ashes and broken pottery, lighter earth, more compact, pieces of brick, a streak of charcoal. Each layer is a season of human life, compressed and stacked gently on top of the last. Houses built, houses abandoned, fires lit, fires left to die, lives lived, then quietly folded away. Then at some sites comes something stranger. The archaeologists scrape down through the remains of a city, walls, floors, fire pits, the usual tangle of human traces. And then their trowels hit a layer that feels different. It's smooth and fine, almost like clay that has been poured and left to settle. No broken pots, no ashes, no bones, just a thick band of clean, pale silt running across the whole trench like a calm, undisturbed sheet. Beneath it, as they keep going, another city waits. From above, that cut through the ground looks a little like a layered dessert, or a slice of bread with something spread through the middle, a sandwich of history, some of them like to say, with a tired, fond smile. City. Then a deep, quiet band of flood-borne mud. Then another city, built on top as if the earth had been wiped smooth and offered back to human hands. Standing there in your imagination, you don't need the dates or the site names. You don't have to remember which city lay beneath which. You only need the feeling of it, that between one world and the next, water came. It rose, moved through streets and courtyards, carried away small things, cooking pots, toys, baskets, and left behind a thick, silent layer of silt. Time passed, the water receded. Someone, long after, walked across that plain and decided to build again. Maybe you've felt something faintly similar in your own life. Not a literal flood, but a moment when one chapter ended so completely that for a while, everything felt like blank earth. A move to a new place. The end of a long relationship. A job that once defined you, quietly dissolving into something else. The world looks the same from the outside, but underneath, there is a clean layer where the old routines no longer quite fit. And then, slowly, you begin building on top of it. New habits, new friendships, new mornings that belong only to this new city of your life. The Sumerians and those who came after them told stories about a great flood, not in the language of satellite maps and climate data, but in the language they had: gods, boats, survivors, promises. Whether those stories correspond to any one specific event is something scholars still discuss gently and endlessly. But the earth itself records its own story in simpler terms: city, silt, city. Before, water, after. As archaeologists brush soil from fragments of tablet in these upper layers, they sometimes find texts that sound less like beginnings and more like recollections. King lists that say, in steady lines of cuneiform, that there were kings before the flood and kings after the flood, as if the event were a quiet hinge that memory could turn on. Administrative texts that hint at restorations and rebuildings. Temple inscriptions that thank the gods not for creating something utterly new, but for allowing what once was to be remade. They find myths too, stories of gods forming humans from clay, of knowledge given or restored, of crafts and measures and rituals that arrive not as inventions, but as gifts. To the people who first told these tales, the world did not feel like a straight line beginning from nothing. It felt cyclical, layered, full of echoes. Something had come before, something had been lost, something was being remembered. While the sun dips low over the mound, the archaeologists wrap their day's finds in small bundles. A broken tablet that will, one day, be pieced together in a museum far away. A clay cone with an inscription on its side. A seal impression showing figures walking in a neat, repeating pattern. They do not yet know which pieces will turn out to matter most. They only know that each fragment might be part of a larger, quieter conversation stretching across time. That conversation eventually finds its way back to the archive you visited earlier, where shelves hold trays and trays hold tablets, and tablets hold lines pressed by hands that never knew your world existed. When scholars read those lines today, they notice something odd and gently intriguing. The texts do not sound like the first awkward experiments of a newborn civilization. They sound like records from a society that already knew how to build, measure, trade, heal, and watch the sky with experienced eyes. In the next part of our journey, we'll move closer to those tablets themselves. We'll sit beside the scribes again, this time not by the riverbank, but in the quiet company of the scholars who painstakingly decipher the wedge-shaped marks. We'll explore how, hidden in these small slabs of clay, are traces of mathematics and timekeeping, of laws and remedies, of a way of thinking that feels strangely polished, as if it too were a restoration rather than a first attempt. For now, let your attention rest once more on that image of the layered earth. City, flood, city. Before, water, after. Think of your own life, where different versions of you have built homes on top of older foundations. Nothing truly wasted, just folded into deeper layers. As you breathe slowly, feel those layers settle, becoming heavier and more stable, like the foundation of a house that has stood through many seasons. You do not have to sort them or name them tonight. You can simply let them be, resting quietly, while the present moment, this room, this breath, this story, sits gently on top. Imagine that the lights in the archive are lower now, as if the building itself were preparing to sleep. The air is still, wrapped in a gentle hush. Somewhere far above, the night has settled over the city. But down here, between rows of shelves and trays of clay, one small pool of lamplight remains. In that circle of light sits a scholar at a wooden desk. Not an ancient scribe this time, but someone from our own world, glasses sliding down their nose, a sweater pulled loosely around their shoulders, a mug of tea gone lukewarm at their elbow. Their desk is scattered with photos, notes, and careful drawings of wedge-shaped signs. You stand just behind them in your imagination, quiet as a shadow, and watch as they lean closer to a photograph of a tablet. The picture shows neat rows and columns of cuneiform, arranged with a precision that feels almost like a pattern of tiles. At first glance, it might look like any other tablet, just another record, another list. but the scholar's face holds a kind of soft wonder, the same expression someone might have when they recognize an old melody played on a new instrument. "Look at this," they might whisper, not to you exactly, but to the room itself. Their finger traces a line of symbols. These aren't random numbers, they're related, they follow rules. You don't need to understand the symbols, you don't have to read the numerals. It's enough to know that more than 4,000 years ago, someone sat with a stylus and a piece of clay and arranged these marks so that they lined up in a particular way, so that certain relationships, certain patterns in the world could be seen more clearly. If you picture yourself seated beside that scholar, you might imagine what the original scribe saw. Perhaps they were working at a low table near a window, afternoon light slanting in while the air outside shimmered with heat. The tablet in front of them was smooth and cool. Their teacher had shown them how to set up the columns, how to arrange the values, how to check whether the pattern held. They weren't playing with empty symbols. These numbers had uses. They measured fields and buildings, helped divide harvests, guided trade, and pointed to rhythms in the movement of the heavens. Over time, these quiet workers of clay and thought developed a way of counting that divided circles and hours into 60s, a number that breaks down gently into many smaller, tidy pieces. Every time you glance at a clock and see 60 minutes in an hour, or notice that a full circle is 360 degrees, you are touching the ghost of their work without even knowing it. The shape of your day, the way you schedule your meetings and set your alarms, the arcs traced by your car's steering wheel, somewhere inside all of that is the echo of a decision made beside a river thousands of years ago, to count in a way that fit the sky, the seasons, and the turning of wheels and gears yet to be invented. If you let your shoulders drop a little more, you might feel how comforting that is. To realize that you are not alone in time, that the structure of your hours is not just a random invention of a hectic, modern age, but part of a long conversation between human beings and the world's repeating patterns. Back in the lamplit archive, the scholar flips to another photograph. And this one shows a different tablet, its surface filled with what look like problem sets, practice lines, examples, a student's work perhaps, things like, if you have this much grain and it grows by this much, what will you have later? How do you share a field fairly? How do you find a length that, when multiplied by itself, gives a square of a certain size? Again, you are not asked to solve anything. You are not here to do math. You are simply invited to rest in the knowledge that these questions once lived in someone else's evenings. A young apprentice, brow furrowed, trying to balance the demands of their teacher and their own desire for sleep. A patient mentor, gently correcting a line, praising a well-formed sign, the soft scratch of stylus in wet clay. Those small, silent efforts condensed into methods that we still build upon today. Without fanfare, in rooms that smelled of clay and oil and river air, they learned how to keep track of everything that flows: time, barley, interest, distance. And like the river itself, those ideas kept moving, carried forward by traders, scholars, and languages until they reached calendars, compasses, and clocks you recognize without thinking. If you've ever stared at a calendar, feeling overwhelmed by all the squares and numbers, you might take a slow breath now and imagine them differently, not as boxes trapping you, but as ripples, waves of days and weeks that our species has been gently trying to understand for a very long time. The Sumerians looked at the turning of the year and tried to give it shape. In their own way, they were doing what you do when you write a to-do list or block out time to rest, telling time, "Here is how I will meet you." The scholar at the desk flips through more notes, a tablet that records interest on loans over time. Another that lists measurements for building, a wall this long, a canal this wide. Another that notes how often a certain bright star appears before dawn at a particular season. Each one is not a grand theory, but a small, steady step in learning how to live alongside cycles bigger than any one life. In some inscriptions, the Sumerians hint that this knowledge was not entirely new even to them. They speak of receiving measures, arts, and crafts from earlier days, from times that feel almost mythic. They describe themselves less as bold inventors standing on untouched ground, and more as careful restorers, people sweeping dust from old carvings, retracing faint lines, and making incomplete patterns whole again. There is something deeply gentle in that way of seeing themselves. They didn't have to carry the pressure of being the first, the only, the origin of everything. They could instead think of their work as remembering, repairing, reconnecting. In their temples, when they carved the restoration of what was before, they may have been referring to buildings and rituals. But the phrase also feels like a description of something humans still do today whenever we recover an old habit that nourishes us, or return to a part of ourselves we had set aside. Maybe you've had moments where life felt like it pushed you into constantly inventing new roles, new plans, new ways to be. If so, this Sumerian attitude might offer some relief. You don't always have to start from zero. Sometimes it is enough to restore something that once made sense to you. A bedtime, a small morning walk, a hobby that soothed your mind, a simple way of organizing your day that you quietly abandoned. Restoration could be a form of quiet courage. The scholar rubs their eyes, closes a notebook, and leans back in their chair. The tablet photographs sit in their folders, the numbers and signs resting now, their meanings safely noted for future readers. The archive is almost completely dark, except for the faint path of emergency lights along the floor. You step away from the desk in your mind, letting that little circle of lamplight grow smaller behind you. As you walk, you carry with you not the details of the calculations or the shapes of the signs, but a feeling that behind every clock face and calendar page in your life stands a long line of quiet minds stretching back to the banks of the Euphrates, minds that tried, in their own slow evenings, to understand the turning of the world so that others might rest a little easier inside it. Outside the archive, the night is deep and still. The sky above your city, wherever you are, may not look exactly like the sky above Ur or Uruk once did. But it is the same kind of sky, studded with patient stars, carrying the same moon that once shone on drying clay tablets laid out in temple courtyards. If it feels comfortable, you might pause here and take a slow breath in and out. As you do, imagine those ancient scribes and these modern scholars forming a quiet bridge between you and the distant past. Their work threads through your minutes and hours, gently holding up the structure of your days. You are walking on a floor they helped pour, moving through a house of time they helped design. In the next part of our journey, we'll listen more closely to the stories those people told themselves about where their knowledge came from. We'll hear how they used myth and memory to describe an origin that felt older than their own cities, how they imagined beings of water and sky, floods and restorations, and human beings formed with a purpose stitched into their very existence. Not to frighten or astonish us, but to offer another soft way of understanding why we are here at all. For now, let numbers, stars and hours blend gently into the background. You don't need to chase them or hold them. They are already holding you quietly as the night goes on. The night around our story has grown deeper now. Perhaps in your room too the light has softened. or the edges of objects have blurred a little as your eyes grow heavier. That's all right. You don't need to follow every detail. You're allowed to drift in and out, the way you might listen to rain against a window or the low hum of distant traffic. Back in the land of Sumer, the lamps are being lit. Not in museums or archives, but in temples and courtyards, in quiet rooms where stories are told. The people who once walked those riverbanks and carved numbers into clay did more than count and measure. They also asked questions that feel strangely familiar. Where did all of this come from? Why are we here? What does it mean to live a human life between earth and sky? They didn't have telescopes or physics. They had something else. The ability to weave wonder into words, to turn questions into stories that could be shared by lamplight. Imagine yourself now sitting on a low cushion in a Sumerian courtyard at night. The air is warm but not heavy. Above you, a strip of sky stretches between mud brick walls, scattered with stars. Around you, a few others sit in a loose circle. Children, elders, neighbors, resting after a long day. A small oil lamp burns at the center, its flame steady, casting soft gold over clay cups and woven mats. Someone begins to speak. Their voice is calm and measured, like the slow turning of a wheel. They tell of a time before the cities, before the tablets, before even the rivers ran in their familiar beds. The world, they say, was water and darkness, mixed and murmuring. Out of that dim, shifting deep rose the first gods, shaped by currents and dreams. They do not appear in a flash of lightning or roar of thunder tonight. In this sleep-soft version of the story, they arrive as a gentle awareness, a sense that something is watching the waters, feeling the weight of time before there are names for days. As the tale unfolds, the gods begin to shape the world. They separate earth from sky, gather waters into rivers, raise dry land where reeds and date palms will one day grow. They move slowly, as if listening to the world as they work, adjusting its contours the way an artist might smooth clay. Eventually there are fields, winds, animals, and the first rhythms of seasons. But the world, for all its quiet beauty, is not yet complete. The work of maintaining it is heavy. Fields must be dug. Canals must be cleared. Temples must be built. In one version of the story, the lesser gods grow tired of endless labor. In another, there is simply a sense that something is missing, someone meant to live in this world, to walk its paths, to remember its patterns. So the gods gather. They decide to fashion a new being, something that belongs to both earth and the divine. In the temple light of your imagination, you see them kneel beside a riverbank, hands dipping into soft, dark clay. They mold the earth carefully, not rushing, shaping arms and legs, a head, a chest. They mix the clay with a touch of their own breath, their own awareness, their own capacity for memory. We could tell this part in dramatic ways, with storms and arguments, with failed attempts and frightening images, but tonight we won't. Tonight, all you need to imagine is a pair of hands, lifting a figure shaped from river mud, holding it gently and whispering a purpose into its silent form. You will walk the fields, you will tend the water, you will build, you will remember, and so in the story, humans come into being. Not as afterthoughts, not as mistakes, but as partners in maintaining the world, caretakers who live in the thin, precious space between earth and sky. As you listen, sitting on that cushion in the courtyard, you might feel something unexpectedly tender in this myth. It says, you are made of the same stuff as the ground beneath you. You are literally of the earth. But you carry inside you a spark of awareness that can look at the sky, count the stars, tell stories, and decide what to preserve. You belong to both realms at once. Maybe, in your own life, you've felt pulled between very different worlds, between work and home, logic and feeling, practicality and dreams. The Sumerian myth has a gentle answer. Of course you feel that way. You were always meant to stand in between. You are built for it. The storyteller continues. After humans are formed, the gods share with them certain gifts. They teach them how to plant in straight lines, how to measure a field, how to build walls that will not fall at the first strong wind. They give them rituals to mark the turning of seasons, songs to honor the forces they cannot see, and something more intangible, a sense of order, of rightness, of how things should be. In some texts, these gifts are called me, decrees or patterns of civilization. Kingship, music, weaving, wisdom, justice, craft. To the Sumerians, these are not things humans invented out of nowhere. They are treasures passed down, entrusted to people to guard and practice. The gods in these stories are not distant tyrants. They are more like old, patient teachers, asking only that their lessons be remembered, adapted, and carried forward. If you tilt your mind a little, you might see how soft and comforting that idea can be. Instead of feeling like you must create your life from a blank page, you can imagine that you are part of a chain of caretakers. The way you make your morning coffee, the way you straighten your desk, the way you speak kindly to someone when you're both tired, these can be seen as small acts of tending a world that was handed to you layer by layer. The story in the courtyard drifts toward the topic of floods again, but not as something to fear tonight. Instead, the storyteller speaks of them the way one might speak of storms in memory. Heavy, yes, but followed by rebuilding. The gods, seeing the world go through cycles of flourishing and loss, send back their gifts again and again, reminding, restoring, repairing. Cities fall, new cities rise. Knowledge is damaged, then rediscovered. The Sumerians place themselves in this pattern not as the starting point of everything, but as one recovery after some older forgetting. In some inscriptions, kings of old boast that they have restored temples according to their original plans believed to be ancient even in their time. It is as if they stand in a half-remembered house, tracing with their fingers along faint lines on the wall, trying to repaint what was there before the colors faded. Some modern readers see in these myths a hint of something more. Perhaps a memory of earlier, lost civilizations or of great floods that reshaped the land. Others see them simply as metaphor, a poetic way of describing how fragile human knowledge can be and how often it must be rebuilt after war, disaster, or neglect. For our purposes tonight, it doesn't really matter which interpretation is right. What matters is the feeling the story leaves behind. That you, like the Sumerians, are part of a long, quiet effort to remember what is worth keeping. Perhaps there was a time in your life when you knew how to rest more easily, how to let your mind soften at night, how to find joy in small routines. Perhaps, somewhere along the way, that knowledge got buried under layers of urgency, obligation, and noise, like a city under silt. If so, you might think of yourself now as one of those gentle archaeologists we met earlier, brushing away a little dust. By listening to stories like this, by choosing to take this time for yourself before sleep, you are already practicing a kind of restoration. You are remembering that your mind deserves quiet, that your body deserves rest, that you are more than the tasks you completed today. In the courtyard, the storyteller's voice grows softer. The children nearby lean on their parents' shoulders. Someone stifles a yawn. The oil lamp flickers, then steadies. The story does not end with a battle or a judgment. It ends with an image. Humans, made of clay and awareness, walking under the wide sky, carrying within them both the weight of the earth and the lightness of the stars. You, listening now, are one of them. You may not live beside the Euphrates, but your days, too, are a blend of simple tasks and quiet questions. You, too, shape your world in small ways, sending messages, cooking meals, showing up for others, arranging your time. And you, too, are allowed to rest when the work of the day is done. In the next part of our journey, we'll shift gently from myth back to reflection. We'll look at how these stories and tablets, these floods and restorations, might change the way we think about beginnings, not as hard, lonely points, but as soft returns to something we've carried all along. We'll see how the idea of being restorers rather than inventors can make it easier to breathe, to forgive ourselves, and to move more gently through our days. For now, let the image of clay people under a quiet, God-lit sky stay with you. Let your own body feel heavy and earthy against your bed, while your thoughts float just a little higher, like stars blinking slowly into sleep. By now, the night around you may feel a little thicker, like a soft blanket drawn up higher along your shoulders. The story has slowed your thoughts, stretched time out gently. You've walked desert mounds and riverbanks, sat in lamplit rooms with scribes and storytellers. You've watched gods shape people from clay in the quiet space between myth and dream. You don't need to hold all of it clearly. In fact, it's perfectly all right if details have already begun to blur. That's what stories before sleep are meant to do. To loosen the grip of exactness, to let images melt into one another until they become something softer and more personal, something your own mind can rest inside. So let's step into this next part together, not as students, but as wanderers, not to memorize, but to gently feel our way through an idea. Imagine again that you are standing before one of those ancient tablets in the archive. Under the gentle light, you see lines of cuneiform running neatly across its surface. To most eyes, including yours and mine, those marks are unreadable. Without years of training, they're just patterns, textures. But even if you can't read the words, you can sense that they meant something. They are the fossil of a thought, the imprint of a mind trying to hold on to a fragment of reality so it wouldn't vanish. Now let that tablet grow larger in your imagination. Picture not just one, but thousands of them, shelves upon shelves, rows upon rows. Some describe barley, some record laws, some tell of floods and gods and the making of people. Together, they make what feels like a library written not on paper, but baked mud. Now imagine that library standing in a low, wide building near the river. The air inside is warm and dry, the shelves made of wood, the floor beaten earth. A few scribes move between tables, updating lists, copying older texts so they won't crumble away. Outside, the sun is high, and somewhere in the distance, thunder mutters. At first, the rain is nothing unusual. This land knows storms, knows wet seasons and dry, but this time the water-laden clouds do not move on. The river grows restless, then swollen, then wide. Day after day, the water rises, streets become streams, fields drown. People move what they can to higher ground, carrying children, tools, small treasures pressed close to their chests. We won't linger on fear or loss tonight. Instead, imagine only this, the library, its doors shut, as water pushes quietly against its walls. Clay tablets, for all their durability, are still vulnerable when wet. Shelves tilt, boxes shift. In the murky water, some tablets dissolve at the edges, others hold. A few are carried away, buried in silt, pressed flat between layers of earth where human hands won't touch them again for thousands of years. Time passes, the flood drains, mud dries, people return or new people arrive. They build again, perhaps unaware that beneath their feet lies a drowned archive, a submerged memory of an older way of speaking, counting, and telling stories. Much later, in another age, archaeologists will dig down through those layers and find fragments of that lost library. A tablet here, a shard there, enough to suggest that once, long ago, someone tried very hard to keep certain things from being forgotten. The Sumerians lived with hints of this kind of loss. In their texts, they sometimes sound like people who have walked into a partly ruined building and found, on the walls, faint outlines of paintings. They know something was there before them. They can see traces of color, the ghost of a shape. They try to fill in the missing pieces with their own pigments, their own guesses. They call their restored picture a myth. And here is the soft, curious thought that many modern readers have lingered on. What if some myths are not pure imagination, but memories wearing a more durable coat? Think of a beloved story in your own life, maybe something a grandparent told you about their childhood, or a tale passed down through your family. Over time, details blur. People add small embellishments or change the order of events. Yet, at its core, the story still carries something true, a feeling, a lesson, a moment of courage or kindness. The literal facts might be fuzzy, but the emotional truth stays sharp. In that way, myth can be like a memory that has gracefully accepted it cannot keep every exact detail, but refuses to let the essence disappear. When modern scholars read Sumerian flood stories, or tales of gods teaching humans, or lists of kings who supposedly reigned for impossibly long spans before the deluge, they don't all agree on what to make of them. Some see pure symbolism, some see distorted history, some see layers, memory, imagination, and meaning all folded together like thin sheets of clay pressed into one tablet. For you lying here in the dark, you don't need to choose a side. You can simply notice how comforting it is to imagine that human beings have always been trying to save what they could from the floods, literal or metaphorical, that sweep through their worlds. They saved numbers, how to divide a field, how to track interest, how to calculate a fair share. They saved patterns, when to plant, when the river might rise, how long it takes for a star to return. They saved stories of beginnings, of mistakes, of forgiveness, of second chances. This is the restoration of what was before, they wrote in their own language. A simple sentence, but if you let it sit with you, it becomes surprisingly soothing. It suggests that much of what we do is not wild invention but careful repair. We reweave frayed threads, we repaint faded lines, we relight lamps that had gone out for a while. Think, just for a moment, about your own life through that lens. There might be skills you once had that you're slowly reviving, a language you're relearning, a hobby you've picked up again, a way of moving your body that feels familiar in some deep, wordless way. There might be parts of your personality you left behind because life was too busy, too demanding, and now you're gently inviting them back. A sense of play, a quiet curiosity, the ability to take a slow walk without turning it into exercise data. You are not starting from nothing. You are restoring what was before. Even right now, listening to this story before sleep, you are participating in a very old practice, letting spoken words accompany you as you transition from waking to dreaming. Long before screens and headphones, people gathered at dusk to listen. They listened to epics, prayers, gossip, and myths. They listened to someone with a calm voice tell them that the world, for all its chaos, had a shape and a memory, and that they belonged inside it. Did you ever walk through an old street or building and feel that someone, long ago, once stood where you are now? You may never know their name, but stories like these remind you that the feeling itself, that brush of continuity, that whisper of shared presence, is real. You are part of an unbroken stream of evenings. Others before you felt tired, anxious, hopeful, lost, grateful. Others before you lay down at the end of their day and wondered what would remain of them when they were gone. The Sumerians answered that question partly with clay. They pressed their worries and agreements into tablets. They carved their king lists and temple restorations into bricks. They etched their gods and floods into myths that could survive being retold, reinterpreted, remade. You may never write on clay, but you also leave traces in the kindness you've shown, in the messages you've sent, in the way someone remembers a conversation with you years later. Your life too inscribes itself into the world, not always in grand, visible ways, often in small gestures, in quiet moments where you chose patience over anger, understanding over judgment, rest over relentless striving. If some days you feel that your efforts disappear, you might hold this Sumerian image in your heart, a tablet lying in the dark, forgotten for a very long time, until someone opens a trench and finds it, brushes it off, and realizes it carried meaning all along. Perhaps parts of you that feel lost now are not gone, only buried under layers of busyness and survival. You do not have to dig them all up at once. You can uncover them slowly, as archaeologists do, square by square, brushstroke by brushstroke, with more patience than force. As this part of the story draws to a close, imagine again that flooded library under an old city, and above it, the newer buildings, the fresh streets, the lives who have no idea what lies beneath their feet. Both layers matter. The old one holds deep memory. The new one holds immediate experience. You, in your own way, stand at the meeting point between what came before you and what will come after. You are not required to carry the entire weight of history. You are simply invited to remember that you are not alone in your questions, your attempts, your quiet work of living. Others have stood where you stand under different stars, beside different rivers, with different words for gods and floods, but with the same longing to make sense of it all, and the same need to rest at the end of the day. In the next part of our journey, we'll turn more directly toward you, toward the listener lying in the dark somewhere in the modern world. We'll draw a softer line between their clay tablets and your glowing screens, between their lamplit courtyards and your bedroom tonight. We'll explore how remembering ourselves as restorers can change the way we approach our own worries, our own sleepless thoughts, our own hopes for the future. For now, let myth and memory blur together like colors in twilight. Let the idea of restoring what was before settle in your chest as something gentle and kind. You don't have to do anything with it. Just breathe with it and let it keep you company as the night leans a little closer. Somewhere outside this story, a small light glows in the dark. Maybe it's the screen in your hand. Maybe it's the standby light of a TV, the faint glow of a charger, a street lamp sneaking through the curtains. Whatever it is, it feels very different from oil lamps and stars and torches on temple walls. And yet as you lie here listening, you are doing something very old, letting a voice from far away keep you company at the edge of sleep. If you could float up for a moment, out of your room, out of your building, out of your city, you'd see a strange, beautiful pattern. All across the world, countless little rectangles of light are glowing in the night. Behind each one, someone is lying on a pillow or sitting on a couch or curled up in a chair. Some of them are watching, some are scrolling, some are listening. Many of them are tired in the same deep way you are. They've had long days filled with tasks, decisions, messages. Their minds are crowded with numbers, not in soft clay columns, but in endless notifications, deadlines, and balances. Their calendars march forward in tidy grids. Their clocks tick with a precision that would have amazed the Sumerian scribes. And yet, beneath all that precision, they are carrying the same old questions. Am I doing enough? Am I falling behind? Where does my story fit in this long, complicated world? Maybe those questions are familiar to you. Maybe that's part of why you pressed play tonight, hoping that for a little while you could step out of the bright, demanding stream of your day and into something slower, gentler, and older. If that's true, then you've already done something quietly brave. You've given yourself permission to pause. Think for a moment about how different your life might look from the outside compared to a Sumerian's. You have electricity, instant communication, the ability to cross oceans in hours instead of weeks or months. You carry in your pocket a device that can reach almost any person, any fact, any story. But in another sense, your days are not so different from theirs. You still wake up to a list of things that need doing. You still depend on others, and others depend on you. You still have to balance work and rest, duty and joy. And just like them, you still need nights when nothing is asked of you except to breathe, to listen, and to let go. Imagine, just for a moment, that a Sumerian scribe could see you now, not your apps or your emails, but the shape of your evening. The way you finally let your shoulders drop, the way your fingers curl more loosely around your phone, the way your eyes grow heavier as a gentle voice tells you about clay and floods and forgotten kings. They might recognize something familiar. They too knew what it was to feel overwhelmed by tasks. Their tablets carried long lists of names and quantities, obligations and expectations. They too sometimes stayed up late, trying to finish their work by lamplight. And maybe, sometimes, they also sat back, looked at the rows of signs they'd just written, and wondered who they were in the middle of all this counting and recording. You, like them, are more than your lists. The Sumerians had a wordless way of admitting that life was too big to hold all at once. They pressed parts of it into clay, so they didn't have to carry everything in their heads. You, in your own time, press parts of your life into messages, notes, photos, shared documents, reminders on your phone. It's easy to see these tools as sources of stress, but if you breathe a little slower, you might also see them as your own version of clay tablets, attempts to make the flow of time more manageable, more visible, less frightening. The trouble is that modern life rarely gives you the other half of the Sumerian equation, the quiet lamplit courtyard where stories are told just to soothe, not to inform or impress. You get the counting, but not the calming. That's why nights like this matter. That's why your decision to listen to a sleep story is not trivial at all. It is a restoration of what was before. You are rebalancing something that has been lopsided for a long time. You are saying, gently but firmly, that your nervous system deserves the same care as your calendar. If you'd like, you can picture yourself now, not just as a listener, but as a small figure in one of those ancient cities. You've finished your work. The tablets have been stacked. The tools have been put away. You've stepped outside, under the night sky. You find a quiet spot on a low wall or a flat rooftop. The air is cooler here, touched by the river. You hear the distant murmur of other voices, the clink of a pot being set down, the soft bark of a dog settling near a doorway. And above you, the same moon that is shining tonight, somewhere beyond your own window. From this vantage point, your worries feel a little smaller. Not because they are unimportant, but because you can see them as part of a longer pattern. People before you worried about harvests, debts, illnesses, misunderstandings, hopes for their children. People after you will worry about other things. You are a single, precious evening in a very long chain of evenings. You don't have to solve everything tonight. You don't have to have a perfect plan. You are allowed to do what the Sumerian scribes did when they finished a tablet. Lay it down, let it dry, and trust that it will still be there in the morning. Maybe there are thoughts that have been circling in your mind all day, things you replay again and again as if you could change them by thinking harder. For a moment, imagine each of those thoughts as a small, wet, clay tablet in your hands. See yourself pressing them gently onto a shelf in a quiet, inner archive. Now you can come back to them tomorrow if you need to. For now, they are safe, waiting. They do not need you to stand guard over them all night. Here, no one is asking you to be the origin of everything. You are allowed to be what the Sumerians saw themselves as, a restorer, a caretaker, a participant in a much larger story. The past few parts of this journey have lingered on floods and layers, myths and numbers. Underneath all of that, a simple message has been forming, slow and steady, like the building of a city. You are not alone. You have never been alone. You are walking in footprints laid down long before you. When you feel small and tired in the face of your responsibilities, you can remember those ancient hands pressing signs into clay, trying to make sense of their world. You can remember that they, too, had nights when they needed to be told that the world was older and kinder than their current worries made it seem. If tonight's story reminded you of a beautiful memory, a place you once visited, a person who made you feel safe, a ritual that used to bring you peace, feel free to share it below whenever you're ready. Somewhere out there, another tired listener may see your words and feel a little less alone. Because here, no one rests alone. Every story from the past is a soft lantern in the dark, gently lighting our way tonight. And every story you carry, every memory, every lesson, every quiet act of kindness is another lantern, even if you never notice it flickering. In the next part of our journey, we'll begin to move toward a gentle crest, a soft, quiet climax where all these threads come together. The clay tablets, the flooded cities, the myths, and your own late-night thoughts will form a single, calm realization about what it means to live between earth and sky, between history and tomorrow. For now, if your eyes grow heavy, let them. If your thoughts start to wander, let them drift. The story will keep going, whether you follow every word or not. It is enough that you are here, breathing, listening, allowing yourself to be carried for a little while by a river of old, steady images. You've already done the hard part. You made it through your day. The rest of this night can belong to softness. Let the night grow a little deeper around you now. Maybe you shift your pillow or pull the blanket up a bit higher. Your body knows what to do when it's given permission to rest. Our story is approaching a soft crest, not a sharp peak, but a gentle rise like the highest point of a slow wave just before it begins to roll calmly toward shore. All the pieces we've touched, clay tablets, flooded cities, myths of clay-born people, your own late-night worries, are drifting together into one wide, quiet view. Imagine for a moment that you're walking through a museum after hours, and there's a guide with you, but they speak very little. Their footsteps and yours echo softly along the polished floor. The public galleries are dim now, only a few lights shine on certain displays. Glass cases hold statues with worn faces, jewelry dulled by time. tools whose wooden handles have long since vanished. Your guide leads you past all of that toward a plain door at the back. They turn a key, open it, and you step into the archive again, the quiet heart of the building where almost no visitors ever go. The air is cooler here, very still. Shelves rise on either side of a narrow aisle, stacked with trays and boxes. Inside, many of those trays lie the small clay tablets we've been visiting in our imagination, each version of the same humble miracle. Thoughts turned into earth, dried and given to time. The guide gestures for you to follow and begins to walk slowly down the aisle. As you move between the shelves, you can almost sense the centuries pressing gently around you, like the weight of a warm, heavy blanket. Not in a suffocating way, but in a protective one. So much has happened. So many lives have already been lived. So many questions have already been asked. You arrive at a table where a single tablet sits under a gentle pool of light. You've never seen this particular one before, but it feels strangely familiar. The marks on it are neat and confident. Whoever wrote them was not experimenting. They knew exactly what each sign meant. In this imagined version of events, your guide doesn't give you a lecture. They just say, in a very soft voice, people once thought that civilization began with these people, that this was the first great awakening. Now some of us think they were carrying something forward, saving pieces of a story from being lost. You do not need to decide which theory is right. You can let those ideas drift past like clouds. The important part is simpler, softer. The Sumerians themselves believed they were restoring something. They looked at their temples, their rituals, their calendars, their crafts, and they said, "This is how we bring back what we almost lost. This is how we honor what was here before the waters came." And here you are, thousands of years later, lying in your bed after a long day in a world that barely resembles theirs, and yet, in your own way, you are doing exactly the same thing. You may not be rebuilding temples of brick, but you are rebuilding quieter things. Your ability to rest after seasons of overwork, your sense of self after changes you didn't ask for, your capacity for gentleness after years of pushing yourself too hard. You are restoring what was before. You might not remember when you first knew how to fall asleep easily without a storm of thoughts. Maybe it was in childhood, when the day's biggest concern was a small thing, a forgotten toy, a test at school, a moment of embarrassment that faded by morning. Somewhere along the way, life grew heavier. The floods came, deadlines, losses, responsibilities, uncertainties. But underneath all of that, there is still a layer of you that remembers how to lie down and trust the night. That remembers how to close your eyes and let your mind wander into soft, harmless dreams. It never disappeared. It was only buried for a while. As you stand in front of that tablet in the archive, imagine that it is not just a Sumerian record. Imagine that it is your own deep memory brought to the surface. The inscription on it is simple, written in a language only your heart can read. You knew how to rest once. You are allowed to know it again. The guide steps back, giving you space. The room is quiet. The tablet lies still in its tray. You don't have to pick it up. It's enough to let that message sink through the layers of your day, the meetings, the notifications, the decisions, the background buzz of worry. Underneath all of that is a calmer ground. Tonight, this story is helping you gently scrape away some of the silt that covered it. Take a slow breath in and out. Now let's widen the view just a little more. Think of the long chain of restorers behind you. The Sumerian scribes. The Egyptians carving their own histories into stone. the monks copying manuscripts by candlelight, the anonymous people who preserved songs, methods, recipes, remedies, lullabies, passing them hand to hand, mouth to ear. Most of their names are gone. Their individual worries have dissolved, but what they restored, we still use. We still sing versions of their songs. We still cook versions of their meals. We still navigate by their stars and organize our days by the patterns they noticed. Now think of yourself not as an isolated point, but as one more link in that chain. You are not expected to be perfect. You are not required to know everything. All that is asked of you quietly is that you carry forward the things that feel worth keeping. A certain kindness you received that you now offer to others. A way of listening that made you feel seen, which you now give to friends or children. The small rituals that keep you steady. Tea before bed, a short walk, a few minutes of breathing in the dark. None of these will make headlines. None of them will be carved into stone. But they matter. They shape the texture of human life just as surely as clay tablets shape the memory of those early cities. When you feel as if your life is too small to matter, think of a single tablet lying for centuries in the dark. On its own, it seems insignificant. But taken together, those small tablets created a record of an entire civilization's heartbeat. In the same way, your tiny acts of restoration, choosing rest, choosing gentleness, choosing patience, add up over time. Not just in you, but in the people who cross your path. Perhaps there is someone in your life who feels safer because you exist. Someone who sleeps a little better after talking to you. Someone who remembers, years later, a simple word of encouragement you barely recall saying. You may never see the full map of your influence, but it's there, spreading out quietly from you like ripples in a very still pool. In that sense, you are already inscribing something into the clay of the world. The guide in the archive leads you to another door. When you step through it, you find yourself back outside the building. The night air meets your face, cool, calm, filled with distant sounds that don't demand anything of you. A car passing, a bit of wind in the trees, maybe the faint call of someone down the street. Above you, the sky feels both ancient and new. Some of the same stars that once shone over Ur and Eridu and Uruk are still burning, sending their light down to you. You stand there for a moment in your imagination, sensing a quiet alignment. Clay, tablets under the desert, shelves in the museum, data on your devices, thoughts resting in your mind, stars turning overhead. Everything in its own way is remembering something, holding a pattern, carrying forward a fragment of meaning. And you, standing between all these layers, are simply breathing, not fixing history, not decoding every mystery, just existing in the overlap between ancient and modern, between clay and screen, between myth and science, between today and tomorrow. You don't have to be the beginning of anything. You don't have to be the final answer to anything. You are allowed to be a gentle continuation. If this thought brings even a small sense of ease to your chest, let it settle there. Let it loosen something in your shoulders, in your jaw, in your belly. Let it whisper to every tense part of you that it can stand down for tonight. The watch is being passed to sleep now. Sleep can keep an eye on things. Sleep can do some of the quiet restoration that waking cannot. In the next part of our journey, we'll begin to come down the far side of this wave. We'll return to the desert, to the broken bricks of old Sumerian cities, and then gradually back to your room, tying everything together in a final soft reflection. There will be no new information to carry, just a slow unwinding, a gentle landing. For now, stay as you are. Listen to your own breathing for a moment. Feel how it moves in a calm, ancient rhythm that connects you to every human who has ever lain awake, listening to a story, waiting for sleep to arrive. You are in very good company. The story is beginning its gentle descent now. Not a sudden drop, but a slow, quiet slope toward rest. If your eyes are heavy, that's welcome here. You don't have to hold on tightly to each word. You can let the phrases wash around you like a tide that's come to clean the shore of your thoughts. Let's go back, just once more, to where everything began tonight. The desert of southern Iraq stretches out in your imagination again, wide, quiet, a sea of sand and broken brick under a sky full of stars. The air is cooler now than it was at sunset. The heat of the day has drained away into the earth, leaving behind a softness, like the moment when a fever finally breaks. You stand at the edge of an ancient mound, the remains of a city that has collapsed into itself over thousands of years. It's hard to believe that beneath your feet lie streets, courtyards, and rooms where people once ate, laughed, argued, worried, and fell asleep just as you are trying to do now. The desert wind stirs, lifting a few grains of sand, tracing faint patterns over your shoes. In that breeze, it's almost as if the past is breathing, slowly, gently, without urgency. Think of everything we've walked through together. Clay tablets cooling in the dark, flood layers lying quietly between one city and the next. Myths of gods shaping humans from river mud. Numbers that found their way into your clock and your compass. The idea that these people were not starting from zero, but restoring something they felt slipping away. And then somewhere along the way, we found you sitting in your own room, in your own century, carrying your own invisible load of questions and responsibilities. Standing here in the desert of your imagination, you might suddenly feel how all of these layers, ancient and modern, clay and screen, myth and daily life, stack together inside you, not as a tangle, but as a gentle, stable column of experience. You are not just someone who can't sleep. You are not just someone who has too much on their mind. You are a human being in a very long line of human beings, all of whom had evenings when they needed to be reminded that they were part of something larger, older, and kinder than their current worries. Look out over the ruins. The jagged outlines of old walls catch the starlight. Some blocks still bear faint traces of inscriptions. Once, these inscriptions were crisp, sharp, freshly carved, proud declarations of kings and builders. Now they are softened, half erased. Time has edited them down to what really endures, a hint of a name, a curve of a sign, a suggestion that someone cared enough to leave a mark. In the same way, if you look back over your own life from this quiet vantage point, the sharp edges of certain memories may begin to soften. The exact words spoken in an argument blur. The precise dates of old failures and embarrassments fade. But what remains visible, glowing faintly in the sand, are different shapes. Moments when you chose to show up. Moments when you learned something hard and carried it forward. Moments when you were kinder than you had to be, even if no one noticed. Those are your inscriptions. They are written, not in stone, but in the lives you've touched. And like the faint carvings on these ancient bricks, they persist in ways you rarely get to see. Take a slow breath in and out. Somewhere beyond the desert, a river still flows. The same rivers that nurtured Sumerian fields now run past modern cities and towns, winding through a world that has changed almost beyond recognition. But water is water. It moves, evaporates, falls as rain, returns. The cycle continues. Your days are like that too. Busy, yes. Sometimes overwhelming, but always moving, always circling back to certain essential things, waking, working, connecting, resting. At times, rest has been the part that gets eroded, the piece of the riverbank that wears away under constant currents. Tonight, by lying here and listening, you are quietly rebuilding that bank. One calm story at a time. One slow breath at a time. You might imagine, just for a minute, that the Sumerians could see you now. Perhaps one of them is standing beside you on this desert mound, a figure clad in linen, hair tied back, eyes reflecting the stars. They look at the ruins of their world, then at the glow from your distant city, then at your tired face. They don't scold you for your worries. They don't lecture you about how much easier or harder their life was. They simply recognize a familiar posture, shoulders a little tight, mind a little too full, heart carrying more than it can comfortably manage alone. Maybe they put a hand over their chest, then gesture to yours, a small, wordless way of saying, same. And in that shared understanding, something in you loosens. You realize that over thousands of years, the basic architecture of being human has not changed. We love, we fear, we hope, we grieve. We carry more stories than we know what to do with. And sometimes we need help putting them down at night. That's what this story is for. Not to convince you of any theory, not to fill your head with facts, but to give your mind a gentle, safe place to wander until it's ready to drift into sleep. The wind in the desert picks up just enough to make a low, soothing sound like someone turning the pages of a very large book. Each gust lifts a little dust from the ruins, then lays it down again, smoothing harsh lines, softening broken edges. Let that way of moving become a model for how you treat your own thoughts. When a worry rises, about tomorrow's tasks or yesterday's mistakes, or some future you can't quite see, imagine it as a bit of dust lifted by the wind. You don't have to push it away or cling to it. You can simply let it rise and settle somewhere softer. The Sumerians had floods. You have email. The scale and texture of your challenges are different. But in each case, the invitation is the same. Let what is too much pass through. Save what is worth keeping. Rebuild gently on the other side. Maybe there is one simple thing from today that you'd like to inscribe before sleep. Not as a worry, but as a small, grateful note to yourself. It could be something you did well even if no one else noticed. It could be a moment of connection, a smile, a message, a shared laugh. It could be the fact that despite everything, you showed up to your own life again today. You don't have to write it down. Just acknowledge it, silently, as if pressing a small, gentle sign into the clay of your memory. This mattered. And then, just as gently, you can let the rest of the day fall away. The regrets, the second-guessing, the scenes you keep replaying can be left for another time, or never picked up again. They don't need to follow you into sleep. They've already been thought enough. If tonight's story reminded you of a beautiful memory, a place that made you feel small in a peaceful way, a person whose presence calmed you, a time in your life when evenings felt easier, you might choose to hold that memory lightly now, like a lamp in the dark. Or when you wake and feel ready, you can share it below so someone else can feel less alone. Here, remember, no one rests alone. Every story from the past is a soft lantern in the dark, gently lighting our way tonight. And every memory you carry, every quiet kindness you offer, even to yourself, is another lantern, adding its small circle of warmth to the vast shared night. You stand for a final moment on the desert mound and look up. The stars are bright, but not harsh, like tiny, steady breaths of light. Somewhere among them, planets wheel silently. Constellations, the Sumerians named, in their own language, still trace their old paths. You close your eyes in this imagined scene and feel the night press a soft kiss to your forehead. It doesn't ask anything of you. It simply promises to keep watch while you rest. When you open your eyes again, you're back in your own room. The desert has dissolved. The archive has faded. What's left is the familiar shape of your ceiling or the inside of your eyelids, the weight of your body against the mattress, the steady rhythm of your own breath. We've nearly reached the end of tonight's journey. In the final part, we'll move into a full sleep outro, a slow, soothing landing that gathers up everything we've touched and sets it down gently beside your bed, where it can wait until morning. No new questions, no new layers. Only the simple, repeated reminder that you are safe to rest and that it's okay to let go. For now, let your limbs grow heavier, as if they are made of the same cool clay that once dried in temple courtyards. Let your thoughts become lighter, floating up and away like dust in a soft desert breeze. You've walked far enough for one night. We've come a long way together tonight. From deserts and rivers to archives and courtyards, from clay tablets to glowing screens, from ancient questions to the quiet space of your own breath. Now there is nothing new you need to learn, nothing you have to remember. This last part is only here to help you land. If you'd like, take a moment to notice your body, the way your head rests on the pillow, the way the blanket holds your weight, the way the mattress rises gently to meet you, as if the earth itself is saying, "I've got you. You can let go now." You do not have to hold your body up anymore. Gravity can do the work. You can simply rest on top of it, like a clay tablet resting quietly on its shelf. Let's gather the images of tonight, not to think about them, but to set them gently beside you like small, comforting objects on a bedside table. Here is the desert, wide, silent, patient. The ruins of Sumerian cities sleep under the stars, their bricks softened by time. The wind moves slowly over them, humming its low, ancient song. Nothing is asked of you there. You are just a guest standing under a friendly sky. Here is the river, dark and slow, reflecting pinpoints of light. On its banks, the first cities once glowed with lamplight and cooking fires. People ended their days just as you are ending yours now, tidying, talking softly, stepping away from tasks and toward bed. Somewhere a scribe stacked his tablets and blew out his lamp. Somewhere a parent told a story to a child whose eyes were already half closed. Here is the archive, cool, still, lined with shelves. Clay tablets rest in their trays, their wedge-shaped marks like sleeping footprints. They do not demand to be read tonight. They are content simply to exist, to continue holding their memories in silence. You, too, are allowed to hold your memories without sorting them. You don't have to organize or explain anything right now. Here is the courtyard, an oil lamp burning in the center, faces lit with warm, gentle light. A storyteller's voice rises and falls in easy rhythm. Myths of clay people and quiet gods fold the listeners into a soft sense of belonging. You sit among them in your imagination, just another tired soul sharing the same night air, feeling less alone with every word. Here is the rooftop, the city stretched out below, the sky vast above. You and an ancient scribe sit side by side, saying nothing, both aware of how strange and beautiful it is to be alive between earth and stars. The details of your lives are different. The feeling of needing rest is exactly the same. And finally, here is your room, the familiar outline of your ceiling or the inside of your eyelids. The quiet sounds of your own world, perhaps a distant car, a fridge humming, the muffled life of your building or neighborhood. All of these scenes can settle now, like dust, gently falling back to the ground. You don't have to hold them in focus. Let them blur, then soften, then fade to a comfortable dimness in the background of your mind. If thoughts about tomorrow try to step forward, schedules, tasks, conversations, picture yourself doing what the Sumerian scribes did with their tablets at the end of a long day. They placed them carefully on shelves and left them to dry. They did not hover over them all night, checking and rechecking. You can do the same with your thoughts. Imagine a quiet inner room lined with shelves. Each shelf is a safe place for a concern, a plan, a question. One by one, take the things your mind keeps circling around and set them on those shelves like small clay tablets. This email can wait here. This decision can rest here. This worry has been heard. It can lie down here for the night. You don't have to solve anything before sleep. You only have to give your thoughts somewhere safe to rest. If it helps, you might silently say to yourself in a slow, gentle rhythm, "This is enough for today. I am enough for today. The rest can wait." Your breath has been with you through this whole journey, moving in and out without any effort on your part. It has walked with us through deserts and archives, through myths and reflections. Now let it take the lead completely. Notice the sensation of air entering your nose or mouth. Cooler on the way in, softer and warmer on the way out. You don't need to change it, just feel it, like watching a very calm river flow past, in and out, in and out. With every exhale, you might imagine, a little more tension leaving your body, your forehead smoothing, your jaw unclenching, your shoulders sinking, your hands softening, your legs growing heavier, as if they're made of gentle, peaceful earth. The Sumerians once wrote, "This is the restoration of what was before." Tonight, that restoration is happening inside you. You are restoring a quieter rhythm of mind. You are restoring trust in sleep. You are restoring your right to rest without guilt, without proving anything. Nothing in this moment needs to be productive. Nothing in this moment needs to be shared or posted. This moment belongs only to you and your body and the long, kind night. If you're still awake enough to hear these words clearly, know that you are exactly where you need to be in the story, neither ahead nor behind. Sleep comes in its own time, like a slow, deep tide. Your only job is to lie on the shore and let it rise around you when it's ready. If tonight's story brought you even a small sense of calm, you might, when you wake, leave a gentle comment for yourself. Something kind that your future self can read on another hard day. It doesn't have to be profound, even a simple, "I made it through, I chose rest." That matters. Can become a tiny lantern you've left for yourself in the dark. If this story reminded you of a beautiful memory, a place, a person, a feeling, you're welcome to share it when you feel ready. Someone else, somewhere in the world, may read your words late at night and feel a little less alone. Here, no one rests alone. Every story from the past is a soft lantern in the dark, gently lighting our way tonight. And every story you carry adds its own quiet glow. Before this journey fully dissolves into whatever dreams may come, a soft reminder. Before we drift into future nights and new ancient tales, remember you can subscribe to Ancient Sleep Story whenever it feels right. Here, you'll always find peaceful stories that soothe the heart and quiet the mind. Don't forget to subscribe for more peaceful nighttime journeys, only when it feels gentle, never urgent. Your rest comes first, always. For now, there is nothing left to do. The clay tablets are on their shelves. The desert is sleeping under the stars. The river is gliding past in the dark. The archive is closed, its lights dimmed. The storyteller's voice is fading into a comfortable hush. All that remains is you, your breath, the slow, steady turning of the earth under your bed, and the deep, patient night, waiting to carry you wherever your dreams want to go. Let your thoughts grow softer. Let your body grow heavier. Let your awareness drift like a small boat on a very calm, ancient river. If sleep hasn't arrived yet, it is on its way. If it's already here, you don't need these words anymore. They can dissolve, like writings in the sand at the edge of the sea. The story has been told. The lanterns are lit. You are safe to rest. Good night, gentle traveler. May your dreams be light, your heart be eased, and your mind remember, in some quiet corner, that you are part of a long, beautiful story that began long before you were born and will continue gently long after tonight. Sleep well.